Magandang umaga po mga kaibigan. Tayo po ay nasa special edition ng ating Tapatan sa Aristocrat. We invited resource persons to be with us today and two of them made it despite the hectic schedule. You know, we were hoping some other men on the ground would be able to join us. But due to previous engagements and some other concerns, hindi sila makakarating. But we're happy. We have with us former Interior and Local Government Secretary, former Tourism Secretary Rafael Alunan, who has opted to join us today, and former Commission on Human Rights Commissioner Nasser Marahomsalic, who happens to be from Marawi City. Okay? So we'd like to find out, ano ba yung ugat ng sinasabing violent extremism? Ano ba yung sinasabing koneksyon ng ISIS at Maute? Paano nagkaroon ng alyansa ang mga Tausug, mga Yakan, at ganun din ang mga Maranao? What was the common denominator? Was there a common ideology or was there some other arrangements? No? We'd like to find out. So, Sky, magandang umaga sa iyo.
Magandang umaga din at happy Monday morning. Today is also a special day for the Philippines kasi ngayon araw din yung State of the Nation address ng ating presidente.
Of course.
So, malalaman natin yan kung ano yung sasabihin niya mamaya. But at the same time, we'd also like to welcome our guests. Kasi ako, very interested ako, ano ba talaga yung ugat or history nitong ISIS-Maute group na ito.
Yan.
At kung talagang ang connection nila, gaano kalawak at gaano kalaki. So, malamang masasabi sa atin ng mga guests natin ngayong umaga. So, magandang umaga din po sa ating mga media friends na nandito.
Sabi, koneksyon o koleksyon?
Yun.
May pagkakaiba yun, pero mahalagang pag-usapan. We'd like to welcome a friend from the Diplomatic Corps who's also with us. So, Secretary Alunan, as former Secretary of Interior and Local Government and former Tourism Secretary, considering your service in government for some time, how do you look at this violent extremism? Please.
What we're seeing in Marawi today is a clear and present danger to our national security. Because in Marawi, what I see is the convergence of what I call the whole of terror network. From what I gather from the reports, news reports, and from open intelligence, open source intelligence, what we have there are ISIS fighters from different parts of the world who have already experienced urban warfare, fighting for territory in Iraq and Syria. And some of them have streamed back in here because actually they're encountering military defeats in those two countries, such as Raqqa and Aleppo and Mosul. So you've got Indonesian and Malaysian and Filipino ISIS fighters coming back here, but they have been joined by ISIS fighters from other countries based on military reports. Some of those that have been confirmed killed were ISIS fighters from Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Chechnya, of course from Indonesia and Malaysia. So what we see here is like a foreign invasion of a non-state actor that has a globalist perspective, which is to establish a global caliphate. No? And central to its plan to establish in establishing the global caliphate is a regional caliphate in this part of the world, which includes Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and from what I understand, parts of Malaysia, of Thailand, and even Singapore. Now, apart from ISIS, I call it the core group, ang nakabalot sa ISIS fighting in Marawi are the local terrorist groups, no? You have, from what I heard, the Abu Sayyaf group, the ASG. You've got the Ansar Khilafah movement, the AKM. You've got some elements, especially the youth, from the MILF, the MNLF, and of course, there's the BIFF as an organization. Then I'm also informed that narco-politicians or politicians with ISIS leanings or secessionist leanings with their private armed groups are part of that. And some of them are involved in criminal syndication. No? So, ito yung pintakasin na sinasabi ng militar. So, what we're facing is a whole array of disgruntled elements and those with geopolitical intentions fighting in Marawi against our forces. That is where I am. Now, being a non-resident of Marawi and Lanao, I would like very much to hear from Professor Marahomsalic, Marahomsalic, as to what really is the situation, because you've got insider information and I defer to your knowledge.
Yeah. Let's begin with our good friend Nasser.
I think Secretary Alunan here has a better information than me. You know, the information we got always consists of jokes. And I cannot be serious with these jokes. Although a joke is a better rendition of the reality of its subject. But I agree with him about the participants in the siege of Marawi, in the occupation of Marawi, with some additional information. You know, the ISIS is an isolated group, a separate group actually, and the members all belong to, are all madrasa educated, Arabic educated, many of them, and they have their own religious leaders as well. It's a group of about 200, some 2 years ago, and not all of them are armed. About 200 of them, and now the membership spread quickly. You know, they become a force to reckon with. And their first activity was the rescue operation in Maguindanao. They rescued BIFF, chieftain, Ostads, the chieftain of the BIFF, and they succeeded. And they were only a motley group of, 100 plus. And so they grew up until I don't know how many of them are members. And so they allied with thereafter they allied with the Maute group, the ASG, and of course the BIFF. All these troops were in Marawi. And then there was mention of the narco politics, and I cannot add to that. That's the report of the military. And many of these are now in hiding. Many of these narco politicians are in hiding, and I was told there is a warrant. There are warrants of arrest against them. But you know, revolutionaries are all natural allies, and these revolutionaries in Mindanao claim to be champions of the right of self-determination of the Bangsamoro. But their strategies differ. That's why the mainstream revolutionaries like the MNLF and the MILF don't associate themselves with them formally. But because they are relatives, you know, those troops in the ground are relatives, sometimes some of their members would be forced to join during the warfare because
Relatives yan eh.
yeah, if it's in their places, necessarily they will be drawn to the battle because they have to protect themselves or their relatives or their properties. But all revolutionaries, for that matter, you know, resort to acts of terrorism
Okay.
because that is their only weapon. You know, they cannot fight against a more powerful enemy. And in fact, terrorism, according to a professor of government of Harvard, Michael Wurzel, he said, terrorism is the weapon of the weak. And the more they are oppressed, the better they feel their freedom to do acts of terrorism. Because that's the only way they can equalize, because it will have a devastating effect against their enemies, in this case, the state. So it is a necessary weapon of revolutionaries. Because terrorism is not only limited to those groups which are extremists.
Okay.
They can be employed also in their warfare by the mainstream revolutionaries.
But Nasser, somebody else's freedom fighter may be somebody else's terrorist.
That's why there is no international comprehensive definition of terrorism, because there is a lack of common or shared values around which terrorism may be conceptualized. For example, if I may give an example, for example, in Egypt, you know, during the time of Gamal Abdel Nasser, after whom I was named, he associated himself with the Muslim Brotherhood in order to have an instant popular mass base in his fight against foreign domination, when he nationalized the Suez Canal and other critical industries. So he needed a mass base, and he found this mass base in the followings of the Muslim Brotherhood. But the Muslim Brotherhood wanted more and demanded that Gamal Abdel Nasser become Islamist and ban the manufacture, for example, the manufacture, the selling, and the consumption of liquor. But he was unavailing to the request, to the demand of the Muslim Brotherhood. When he survived, after the assassination attempt against him, which was blamed on the Muslim Brotherhood, he declared the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization and ordered the killing or the arrest of the leaders. And those who survived were chased out of Egypt. The point I'm driving at is, you know, even in a state, leaders would use, you know, would be willing to accommodate terrorists just for
Personal interest.
for their personal interest or to pursue a policy.
Okay.
And so, Great Britain, because of this rift between the Muslim Brotherhood and Gamal Abdel Nasser, Great Britain supported, you know, the Muslim Brotherhood, which they considered also as a terrorist, because they sided with Gamal Abdel Nasser. And so that's it. In
Okay.
the exercise of realpolitik by leaders, terrorism got blurred in the way. And so we cannot define now what terrorism is.
Okay.
For example also, you know, on the Palestinian issue, when a Hamas militant blows himself in Israel, he is immediately branded as a terrorist by Israel and the US government.
Okay.
But he is a hero to the Palestinian people or to insurgents the world over or the Arab governments. And they will even highlight the fact that it is Israel which is a terrorist state for occupying their own territory and depriving them wholesale of their freedom.
Okay.
And also of denying or defying United Nations resolution, for example, prohibiting Israel from creating settlements in Palestinian territories.
Okay.
So under such a situation, where will you place the United States? Which support Israel? Is United States also state sponsoring terrorism?
Okay.
So that's why hindi pwedeng i-define ng terrorism eh. even in international conventions, which deal on terrorism, ang nandun lang yung manifestations ng terrorism. But who is responsible for terrorism? Because in the discussion of terrorism, you have to discuss who the terrorists are. Sino yung mga kapasidad na gumawa ng terorismo? A state will not, no state will agree to a definition where a state may be a terrorist. Hindi
Okay.
sila mag-agree doon. So, pero according to scholars, except especially Baununi, there are many kinds of terrorists. The state as a terrorist, the dissident as a terrorist, religious terrorism also, and then those or individual terrorists.
Okay. Sky.
Parang wala palang borderline pag sinasabi nating freedom fighters and terrorists. No, sir. But is there any difference on these two?
Please.
We're talking about freedom, fighting for one's freedom or independence, depending on what perspective you have. Regardless, there could be a thin red line between freedom fighter and terrorists, okay? Terrorism. But when a group or individuals indiscriminately perform acts against humanity, where they harm, maim, kill indiscriminately innocent people, anywhere and everywhere, because they are soft targets, simply because their objective is to sow fear and terror in society and to bring down that society so that it can control it. I'd say that is an act of terror. And that act of terror is conducted by terrorists. Simple as that. And terrorists like that violate the law. And law enforcers are authorized to run after criminals who violate the law, who commit acts of terror. I think that's very clear.
Okay. Some time ago, the foreign ministers of Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia met at Conrad Hotel. In the opening statement of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Malaysia, he said something like, terrorism has evolved because years ago, decades ago, terrorism was anchored on their personal survival because they have a cause. But today, you have to deal with people who are willing to die for a cause. And in so doing, they would resort to terroristic activities.
There are also terroristic groups that are very powerful non-state actors that are very well funded and are even stronger than some of their target countries. These powerful non-state actors target weak countries because then it's easier to control them. Weak countries are defined as those that have weak societies as well as weak governments, no? And who have displayed this consistently over time. Which is why the Philippines is a target of ISIS. Now, ISIS is very well funded. The question I think that we have to ask ourselves is, where do they get all their money from, right? They have all the best weapons. They can wage war in various parts of the world. They're able to influence terror organizations to pledge allegiance to them. There's Boko Haram in Africa. There's a host of terror groups here in the country that basically just want to secede, and they come in various names: AKM, ASG, MILF, MNLF, BIFF. So you ask yourself, where are they getting the money, and who is controlling these people? Is this really a fight for freedom, or is this a fight for hegemony? And using terror as a weapon to subjugate a society or a nation.
Very valid observation. Yes.
Actually, the issue of hegemony is the one which is making it difficult to define terrorism. For example, uh, during the Second World War, Japan, the Japanese Imperial Army did the most as atrocities. But after the war, which are acts of terrorism, that's very clear. But after the war, America allowed Japan to revitalize. And now Trump is saying that Japan should also rearmed and go nuclear. Why? Because they needed Japan to check the hegemonic designs of the Chinese and the Russians here in the Far East. So where is terrorism there? You want this terrorist state, terrorist empire, the Japanese, to become a power in the Far East. But they were terrorists before and they fought against you. So it's a question of hegemony. For example, in the war against Afghanistan, against the Russian occupiers in Afghanistan, ano bang ginawa ng Amerikano? They supported the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda. Pero after the Russian occupiers were chased out of Afghanistan and the Taliban established a government which imposed an Islamic morality practiced during ancient and medieval times, prohibiting the sale of bikinis as well as all manifestations of hedonism of Western decadence. Galit kayo ng Amerika. Sabi ng Amerika, terrorist state kayo. See? Kaya, ang hegemonism is an issue here in the definition of terrorism. So it is politically unfeasible to define terrorism. Kaninong point of view ba? See? So, yun ang problema natin. There is no common values or shared experiences among nations who are members of the United Nations.
Okay. Secretary Alunan, given such a situation and definition, so where does that leave the Philippines?
No, actually, we should not break our heads over semantics. You call it jihadism, extremism, you call it terrorism. It's all acts against humanity, all right? And acts of terror that are designed to subjugate a society that's being targeted. Simple as that. And these acts of terror violate the laws of the land. And therefore, they are criminal in nature and therefore subject to law enforcement. To me, the problem of terrorism is simply a tactic or a strategy used by state actors and non-state actors in order to control a target society. It's just a weapon in a vast toolkit, in a big toolkit of tactics and strategies, no, to satisfy an aim, a goal. They may or may not use terrorism, right? It's simply a tool, right? What's important is who is using that and for what purpose. We should be asking, why is ISIS here and for what purpose? Of course, they're saying that ISIS represents that mentality where they want to establish, they represent a group of extremists that want to establish a global caliphate. And Marawi is supposed to be the capital of the regional caliphate. Okay, fine, all right, so that's clear. But who's behind these guys? Because they're also killing their fellow Muslims. They call them kafirs because they don't believe in their brand or their interpretation of Islam, right? And they do things that are very un-Islamic, right? That even the mainstream Muslims have already branded as haram, right? So now the question is, who are these guys working for? Are they independent or are they being manipulated by higher powers to satisfy their vested interests? These are the things that media should look into, and academia.
Okay. Would you care to react?
I agree with Secretary Alunan here. Um, there is really a problem with extremist groups because they employ these strategies which are not in accordance with the teachings of mainstream Islam. You know, Islam is anti-terrorism and anti-jingoism. In the Quran itself, there is a verse, a chapter there which says that we come from a male and a female in order to multiply and create out of which nations are created in order that they will understand each other. And the nearest among people to God are the ones who fear the Lord. And there is another verse. We come from one soul. See? And in the traditions of the prophet, there are statements which say that an Arab is not superior to an non-Arab. A black is not superior to a white. And if you hate somebody and you are demanded to execute an action against him, you should do justice to him. Because justice is next to piety. Ang dami pong provision sa Quran na ganyan eh.
Uh-huh.
And even during the time of the prophet, no, he did not made war in a community, no. Umaalis yan eh. Minimit yung kalaban eh. And when he triumphed against Mecca, anong instructions niya? Don't cut any trees. Any tree. Don't open any house which is closed unless you are
Allowed to come in.
bidden to.
Yeah. Okay.
Oo. Yun ang instruction niya. And yung mga Meccans, their leaders were there, na yun ang pumatay sa uncle niya, sa mga the best of his people, sa mga kamag-anak niya. See? So, kaya nga hindi ko naintindihan, ano ba ito? Mayroon bang unseen hands directing the play in Marawi
Okay.
just to satisfy what agenda they have?
Okay.
Kaya ang question posed by Secretary Alunan. Yun ang question. Sino ang may kapabilidad na gumawa noon na maging gumawa ng puppetry?
Gumastos. Okay. Okay.
O kasi meron raw mga salary sila eh. The fighters are receiving salaries. I don't know how true it is. And pati recruitment. At saka they have been doing the recruitment 2 years ago.
Okay.
Oo raw eh.
Alright.
Kaya I
Sige.
was surprised eh. Bakit kaya? Ano ba ang capacity nila to source money?
Okay.
Baka hindi lang sila nagsosource money, binibigyan talaga sila ng mayaman na hindi natin alam kung
Sino.
sino yung mayamang bansa ba? O mayamang philanthropist? Or sino ba yon? Or
Okay.
yun ba ang mga drug lords? Pero the drug lords only have so much eh.
Okay. So,
Hindi.
higher than a drug lord.
Pwede.
Kasi may
Okay.
mas malaki
Mas
yung
maraming
perang
pera.
involved.
Okay. Secretary, you sat as DILG Secretary some years ago. Kailan nagsimulang magparamdam yung mga extremists in the Philippines? As far as you recall.
Well, extremism depending sa layunin yan eh. Originally, it was for independence eh. To assert their freedom because they were never subjugated. Eh. That's their perspective, that's their context. And then eventually it morphed into yung panahon ko na doon ko na nagtagpuan yung Al-Qaeda. And from what I understood of Al-Qaeda under Osama bin Laden, he wanted to unite the entire Muslim world under one Ummah and then establish a global caliphate. Right? Ang ISIS is what? Considered the daughter of Al-Qaeda. But they're moving one step further. They're now after territory. Because you can't have a caliphate unless you have territory. That's why they're invading Iraq, they're invading Syria. The question is that only a ploy? Is that a ploy for somebody? Because there are some voices that say, "Oy, Yung ISIS na yan or Al-Qaeda, ginamit lang yan para buwagin yung Muslim world. They don't want them to unite. That's one.
Okay.
The other is, yung ISIS na yan, ang dami-dami. Tingnan mo naman yung kanilang armaments sa Iraq at saka sa Syria. Grabe. Pati dito sa Marawi, yung mga nakukuha. No? Ang gaganda. Sino nag-supply niyan? Kanino, saan ang galing yan? Sabi daw nila, from the back door, from Malaysia and all that. Yeah, but is that coming from the Malaysian government or dumadaan lang sa Malaysia from other parts of the world? Which means that dito sa ASEAN, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines really have to work very closely together to plug the holes, no? Because we're very porous. We're very porous. And Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines are targeted by ISIS to establish the caliphate. Now, one can also say that somebody is using ISIS, quote unquote, to control Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Right? Who could be that puppet master if ISIS is a puppet? Right? So there are a lot of questions that need to be examined. One thing is for sure, dito sa atin, we have to work closely together if we don't want more Marawis to take place. Okay? We have to work closely together in the international arena and here locally as well. Internationally, we have to go to where the source of terrorist financing is coming from. Right? There's a lot of it coming from Saudi Arabia. We know that. Kasi ang sinasabi, ang balita is Saudi Arabia is telling these terrorists who are mainly from Saudi Arabia, huwag kayong manggulo dito. Doon kayong manggulo sa labas. Etong pera. Okay? Kung gusto niyo mag-recruit, doon kayo mag-recruit. Kung gusto niyo manggulo, doon. O etong pera for madrasas, etong pera para sa mga mosque. Okay? And then they send the radicals. Yeah? Because they have money, they send the radical imams, ustadjes, etc. to teach ang mga madrasas. Tapos to preach ang mga mosque. But not all. But all you need is just one in a pot to start
The ball rolling, so to speak.
to get the ball rolling, no? Or to infect, the pot. So that's one. The other is kung nakalusot yung terrorist funding dito, how is it circulated? Saan dumadaan? Sino nagre-receive? Is it business fronts? Is it through online gambling? Kasi may online gambling that, kunyari online gambling, pero ito yung conduit for remittances, etc., no? And money laundering. Is it through the casinos? Or is it through couriers? Right? So funding. The other is people themselves. You have to get the DFA to work with, host countries where terrorists most likely will be coming from and passing through. You have to work with all these countries. You have to have a database, an integrated database to identify these people and then stop them doon sa mga portals, official portals niyo, mga airports, seaports.
Mm-hmm.
And then through, let's say, joint border patrols or coordinated patrols doon sa laot, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, stopping the flow of backdoor ingress-egress.
Okay.
No? All of these things have to be addressed, not to mention the fact that we are now dealing with a terrorist group that employs a variety of terrorist acts. No? Lone wolves, small teams, and then large military formations like what we see in Marawi. So the preparedness of our authorities must be based on various scenarios, and those scenarios must be obtained from factual information that raise their situational awareness. In which case, if they know that this is what is being done in other parts of the world that could possibly be utilized here, then they should prepare their defenses accordingly.
Okay.
The military should be, let's say, for example, more military units trained for
Urban
urban
warfare.
warfare, and then expand our intelligence networks, no?
Okay.
And bring in society to be willing informants. Because oftentimes, when society looks another way and decides to shut up, then the intelligence community is hampered, no? Or hamstrung. And then we have to improve our counterintelligence because we're heavily infiltrated. You know, you have to get those infiltrators out and spies so they don't know what we're thinking of or plotting. Most of the time, they know what we're thinking of. That's why we get ambushed. That's why the targets get away before we get to reach them.
Okay.
So in other words, everything that we're talking, I'm saying here, falls under one basic umbrella: getting our act together.
Okay. Let me ask you, Secretary and Commissioner Nasser, there are certain steps. Granted, ISIS really is ISIS, and that they're not a puppet of some superpower. The first is you establish a coalition. Second is you pledge allegiance to ISIS. Number 3 is recognition by ISIS leadership. And another part of it is conquering significant territory and population and establishment of a wilayat. Now, at what stage are the so-called ISIS in the Philippines today?
Alam mo, maliit lang sila eh. I do not know kasi the last time before election, I was given the information na 200 lang sila. Sa Lanao ha, wala pa noon sa Maguindanao at saka Hulo. 200
That's
lang raw.
ISIS.
ISIS. Separate talaga yan eh. They started as ISIS. Hindi as Maute or as ASG or as BIFF. Sabi this is a general knowledge in Lanao even before election. Sabi nila, 200 lang sila with 7 religious leaders or ulama. Those educated in Arabic education, who have an Arabic education. And 100 lang raw doon are armed. Yung 100, walang armas. Ganun yon before election. Pero nung nangyari ang Marawi siege, may nakakita sa kanila, na picture pa ha, from the media, yung sapatos nila, ang mga bago. Mas maganda raw tingnan kaysa sapatos ng mga kasundaluhan natin. Pati yung backpacks, mayroon mga backpacks na signature raw. Okay. This comes from a journalist na naipicture niya. So, sabi niya, paano yan? Bakit ganun sila
Kagagandang gamit.
kagagandang gamit? Yung barit ba? Yung sniping rifle. Mayroon sila noon, yung barit na 5 kilometers yata. Pwede kang
Original to,
masinta.
Original ba?
Yun ang hindi ko alam. Nagmamanufacture rin raw sila. Pero I don't know kung ilan ang original. At saka meron rin pa raw silang drone. Meron raw drone. Kaya nakikita nila yung kalaban. So, yung mga ganun ba eyewitnesses account, nakakapagtataka.
I remember.
Sino ba ang funders nila? Kaya marami sa internet denizens na mga Maranaos were questioning the legitimacy of the ISIS or of the these groups. Bakit ganyan sila kagaling at saka ganun ang mga equipment nila? In fact, they are now questioning the legitimacy of the ISIS as they claim to be champions of the right to self-determination of the Bangsamoro. Sabi ng mga Maranao, denizens of the internet, kung talagang Muslim kayo, kung talagang you're fighting for Islam, bakit hindi na lang ninyo patayin ang mga drug lords at saka yung mga corrupt na politicians? Kasi in Islam, everyone who spreads cultural corruption deserves to die. Yun ang penalty.
May matira kaya?
It's a capital penalty.
May matira kaya sa politiko?
Dito sa
yun nga eh.
Pilipinas.
Doon sa
Sa inyo.
amen,
Sa inyo,
sa arm.
May
So
matira
kaya
kaya?
ngayon, nawawalan na yata ng mass base yung mga quote-unquote extremist groups dahil They cannot answer the questions eh.
Okay.
Oo. Kung talagang totoo, atakin na lang yung kalaban nila. Yung mga detachments, yung mga kampo ng pulis at saka kasundaluhan natin. Bakit atakihin yung civilian community like Marawi City? Na wala naman doon yung mga kasundaluhan natin, yung mga pulis natin, ang mga Muslims, hindi naman talagang kalaban yan eh. Oo. Sad to say Kasi magkakamag-anak yan eh. Magkakaroon pa yan ng rido. And our local policemen cannot match the power of the ISIS. Lahat ng kamag-anak nila, mamamatay dyan kung nakipaglaban sila.
Okay. We'd like to open the floor to our colleagues from the media. We have members of FOCAP with us today. Yes, please. Yes.
Hello, yes. Good morning, sir. I'm Alden from Kyodo News. I have a question for Mr. Alunan. Sir Alunan, do you see any weaknesses in the local government system that would allow the growth of ISIS in the Philippines? And on another question, sir, on the issue of federalism and BBL, do you think that these two will stem the tide of the growth of ISIS in the Philippines, or do you think it will further nurture it?
Well, terrorism is a clear and present danger to national security. When we talk of BBL and federalism, we're talking about systems of governance with long-term implications. So those are two different things, and I think they're unrelated at this point. Because my main concern is how to stop the spread of this virulent form of extremism in the Philippines today. You were asking a question about ISIS. The first question?
Yes, sir. Do you see any weaknesses in the local government system, sir?
Well, any terrorist group will target a society or a government that's weak because it doesn't want strong opposition. So clearly, in like Marawi, we've seen, we've heard testimonies of sustained weak governance through the years. And in recent times, let's say over a period of 6 to 10 years, local governments in ARMM, particularly in the Nasser, were infected by crime and corruption, which weakened the quality of governance and therefore heightened resentments towards government. No? And we have a society there that, because a government is only as strong as its society. Okay, that's a very basic principle, no? And if a society is weak, you can't expect its government to be strong. It will be just as weak. Whenever you see a strong government amidst a weak society, it's tyrannical, right? So ideally, a strong and just society produces a strong and just government. Yes, the answer is yes. Weak governance allowed or enabled terrorists to come in and infect. In fact, this whole of terror network that I was referring to earlier includes not just like-minded terror groups, local terror groups working with ISIS. This includes also drug syndicates, because the local governments there were involved in drugs. I think the official record will show that. And they are funding ISIS. They're funding the local terror groups. And of course, the money is being used to recruit. It's used to buy food, support them logistically and even firearms. And some of them are also considered in our intelligence files as narco-politicians. All right, so it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag of bad governance and extremist groups that have converged in Marawi to do battle against the government. Now, the question is, do they want to Do they really want to establish a wilayat, as they say, because that seems to be the official story? Or are they using this as cover to shame President Duterte, weaken his leadership, and then get him out? Is this a prelude to his ouster as president? You know, these are some of the things that we should ask ourselves.
Just one follow-up, sir. When you say there are weaknesses in the local governance, sir, do you mean like they are morally weak, or do they lack financial
All of
capability?
the above.
And how do you propose, sir, to strengthen the local governance?
That takes time. Cannot be instant. There's no instant answers there. Because society itself has to transform. They have to elect the right leaders. You know, in Lanao, in every election, you know, there are about 250, in Marawi, there are about 250,000 registered voters. But the final count is about 500,000, no? If you know what I mean.
So there's a very high population increase?
Yes, only during elections.
Really? Okay. That's nice. Very
No,
good
but,
observation.
The point I'm trying to drive at is this. If society doesn't elect the right people, if the wrong people are elected, they will also appoint the wrong people. You understand? It's because the elected have the appointing authority. So if a governor is the wrong guy or the mayor is the wrong guy, he's involved in crime and corruption, naturally he will appoint people who will advance his vested interests. No? So it starts from society itself. Now, if society is weak and allows a lot of cheating and will not fight back and say that is not right because that is not our will, then they're a subjugated people. Then they can easily be played around with,
Okay.
which has been the case.
Yes.
It's a long hold according to cleanse politically Muslim politics, according to Alunan, which is true. But I have this formula which might shortcut the process or shorten the process. We should have federalism instituted in Muslim Mindanao. Oh, I don't know if the country will go to me, the whole country will agree with me, but it is necessary in Muslim Mindanao, in the region of the Bangsamoro. Because you must have viewed the television footages about the war, and there is the spokesman of the Maute group saying that we want to establish, to have an Islamic state or a state of our own. So that will answer their aspiration. And in fact, I am a federalist. I want a Bangsamoro Islamic state. And among us professionals, ulama, intellectuals, we are all agreed for the establishment of a state for the Bangsamoro. And not only us, but our national leaders, Christian leaders, including President Ramos, President Macapagal, Senate President Coco Pimentel, his father, former Senate President Nene Pimentel,
Okay.
Speaker Alvarez, the peace advisor, and many other Christian national political leaders.
Okay.
And why I'm saying that federalism will at least be responsive to the aspirations of the Bangsamoro.
Okay.
I recognize the problem here about these politicians manipulating elections. But you know, under an Islamic state, and this is practiced in Iran, there is a committee of high, pious and enlightened people, mostly composed of ulama, who will screen those candidates. You just cannot run.
So you'll have to be screened.
There have to be qualifications of candidates running for office. First, must be Muslim, pious, and then must be educated or enlightened. In other words, hindi gambler, hindi womanizer. Yes.
Out na yung isa dyan. Out na yung isa dyan.
Maraming out dyan. Walang kasong corruption. See? Kailangan ma-institutionalize ito. But this only obtains in Iran, by the way.
Okay.
Sa mga Muslim countries, wala yan. Only in Iran, which is really following the system, the Islamic system.
Okay.
Otherwise, walang mangyari. Gaya ng sabi ni Secretary Alunan, wala talagang mangyari. It will take a long haul kung wala itong sistema na to. Because at the end of the day, alisin mo man yan, under martial law, replace them with good people, come election time, dahil sa pera nila, dahil sa marami silang leaders, mananalo pa rin sila. So disqualify them according to the teachings of Islam.
Okay. Secretary? Dagdag.
I just want to add to the question about federalism, no? Because federalism is being used as a solution to our national problems, which are basically rooted on cultural, social, economic inequities. We're a very inequitable society. That's the reason why we have a lot of tensions and conflicts. Because of the sense of entitlement, a sense of impunity, exclusion, very exclusive, very discriminatory. Kaya maraming galit. Excluded ako eh. So you cannot come up with a solution that is also discriminatory because that will not solve the problem. Second, federalism is a way of rearranging your political structure. But will arranging a political structure address your social and cultural inequities? Social and cultural and economic inequities come from a mindset. The mindset that produces exclusion. That's entitlement. Akong hari-hari dito eh. We're very feudal as a society. Whether you're Muslim or not, we're very feudal. And you take advantage of your position. And you want to stay in that position by advancing your vested interests at the expense of the common good. Right? So injustices are committed. But then since you control also all the institutions that where grievances are supposed to be heard, and therefore skew judgments in your favor at the expense of those who may be right, then you create injustice. And that injustice develops resentments that turn into armed violence and armed conflict. Okay. Now, if that is what we're up against, what does changing the political structure have to do with it? You know, it's like you keep on driving your car, or your driver keeps on bumping your car, right? And you say, okay, let's solve this problem. Let's change the car. Right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. Right?
At this point in time.
At this point in time. Now, for federalism to work, it cannot be only in one spot. Federalism is about the entire country. We have 18 regions, and therefore we have to look at it from 18 states forming, a federal union. The trouble is, we go back to culture. Are we really a nation? Are we a united nation? We are not. We are tribal. Up to now. That's why we're very divided. Right? Pagdating na lang sa cultural identity, I'm Ilocano. I'm Maranao. I'm Ilonggo. But never, bihira ka mag-say, I am Filipino. Okay, that's number one. Number two, if we are tribal and we are not a united nation, if we adopt federalism now, will it unite us or will it divide us some more? We have to ask that very basic question. Because if we don't and just rush headlong into this, we might end up breaking up this republic of ours, and we will have 18 different states and no longer the Philippines. So we have to be very, very careful. Federalism will work only if we are united in common purpose.
Okay.
If we are united in common purpose, any system that we adopt, we're going to make it work.
All right. Let me add fuel to the fire. What was this jam or attraction, if you may, that got the Maranaos, the Maguindanaoans, and the Yakans and the Tausugs into Marawi? What brought them there? Was it their purpose to establish a caliphate, or was there a deeper reason, which is economic?
Dahil sila kuno yung mga champions of the right to self-determination. So they naturally gravitate to one another. Yun ang reason yun eh. Against common enemies, as history testified to, they unite. They unite. Of course, the MLF and the MNLF were out of the scene. Kasi ibang methodology nila in warfare eh. So, yun ang motivating factor. But about federalism really, I agree na hindi tayo United Nations eh. Kasi kanya-kanya tayong kultura. And the most distinct of all these tribes, yung Muslims. Kasi different talaga yung sistema nila eh. Kailangan talaga bigyan sila ng Estado kasi iba talaga sila eh. And that was considered in the drafting of the 1987 Constitution. No less than Nolido and Opli indicted our unitary system of government as a tyranny to the Muslims. Sa history ng politika natin, the greater tribes are lording it over the lesser tribes, especially Manila, and then from Luzon. Tingnan niyo, pag may Ilocano kumandidato, lahat ng Ilocano bubuto doon. Pag kumandidato sa pagka-presidente, Bicolano, lahat bubuto doon. See? Ginagamit lang yung arm as a puppet. Oo. Dahil karamihan sa liderato namin, may tinatagong skeletons in the closet. Ginagamit ng national leaders, if you don't do the line, kakasuhan ka namin. Ganun ang nangyari sa amin. Kaya may mga kandidato sa opposition, every election, na nagkakaroon ng zero doon. Imposible yun. So, better, magkaroon tayo ng federalismo. Even in Muslim countries, like Nigeria, may federalismo. Pero
Malaysia,
may greater portion ang mga Kristiyano ron. Pero they have their own state sa Nigeria. See? We just have to respect the identity, cultural weaknesses, cultural uniqueness of people. Oo. In fact, that is the teaching of Christianity. Autonomy, subsidiarity, the principle of subsidiarity. How can you govern, for example, a sector of our society na ibang mga paniniwala? You will control them from upstairs? Hindi mangyari yun. You have to use their own people. Pati China, ngayon, di ba, uniform rules ang governance nila, communism, pero may one country, two systems sila. Ang Hong Kong, ang Macau, pwede yan eh. It will work eh. Malaysia, for example, kanya-kanya ring states. Even though uniform sila eh. Most of these states are Muslim. Pero dahil sa iba-iba yung mga needs nila, kaya okay yung federalismo. Hindi sila magkakasundo.
okay.
Pero as regards the fear that ma-disunited itong country, maging disparate, magkakahiwalay-hiwalay, gawin natin ang example ng Germany. Nandoon sa Federal Constitution na walang pwedeng magsisid. Period. Pag magsisid kayo, sige, lahat ng states will war against you.
Okay.
So, yun ang posibleng maging solution sa fear natin na magkawatak
We will devote
watak tayo.
a different edition for federalism. That will be a very good issue, I tell you. Yes.
Tess Ramiro from the Catholic Media Network. My premise is from a friend, a Muslim friend, who said, a true Muslim cannot be a terrorist, and a terrorist cannot be a true Muslim. Given that statement, if ISIS as a group is a terror group or a terrorist group, why are they pursuing the idea of a caliphate, whether globally or regionally, considering that caliphacy is based on a religion of Islam? Or is there any other form of caliphacy that you know, such that this is being pushed by by ISIS?
Para kanino yan?
Both. Whatever your take is on this.
Kasi there are reasons why these people, including the extremist groups, are pursuing caliphate. Kasi our federal world order is controlled by the United States, and the United States ay palaging balakid sa mga dikay ng mga Muslim states. Ganun yun. Actually, we have now a United Nations of America. Oo, controlling everything. Oo. For example, in the war. For example, in the war in the Balkan states, no?
The Balkan states, yes.
Oo. Bosnia and Croatia asserted their independence from Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
But the Serbians didn't like it. Yes, didn't like it. And what did NATO or the United States of America did? Immediately, they went to the succor of Croatia. That is a Catholic state. Yes. And the mechanized Blue Army of the United States went there and easily they defeated the Serbians. But what did America and the NATO did? And the United Nations did to Bosnia, Herzegovina? Hindi sila pumunta doon kaagad eh. In fact, they issued a resolution prohibiting the importation of arms to Bosnia. Yung military hardware nandun sa Serbia. Yung mga factories. And they allowed the Serbians to conduct ethnic cleansing, raped about 20,000 women, impregnating them, and then killing Muslims. There was a spree killing there, and depopulated many cities and villages. See? And when the volunteers from Muslim countries arrived in Bosnia and posting victories, but little victories only, the NATO took advantage and hijacked
Professor.
the war in Bosnia, used their planes, but only infantry, Blue Army of the United Nations. See?
Professor,
Why?
Nasser.
Why destroy first Bosnia by the Serbs into the Middle Ages? Or because the Americans know, or the NATO knows, that Bosnia will be an Islamic state and they might happen to be like Afghanistan or Malaysia, which are independent from in connection with their foreign policy. So yun ang nakikita ng mga Muslims eh.
So you're saying...
Sa Israel, liit-liit lang. Pero they kept it floating. And in spite of the fact that they defied resolutions of the United Nations, so what will you make of that? So, yung mga militante na nag-iisip, sabi nila, we establish a caliphate. Will also be a superpower.
Okay.
So yun ang punto mo as far as the ISIS is concerned.
So this is my explanation there.
But it doesn't
na
necessarily
mayroon rin silang frustration.
Okay.
But of
At
course,
yun ang ine-exploit.
yun ang ine-exploit nila. Of course, mahirap yung caliphate. Kasi ginawa na yan ni Strongman Gaddafi at saka si Nasser. Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt. Gusto nila may Pan-Arabic Confederation.
So you're saying...
Pero hindi nangyari yan kasi different yung versions nila ng Islamic State. Hindi sila pari-pariho. Kaya that failed. So I do not know if it will succeed by a band of, religious leaders na magandang na demagogues. I think Caliphate is not the time now.
Okay.
And that was destroyed after the Ottoman Empire, which was corrupt. Wala na yan.
Okay.
Wala na
Locally
yan.
speaking, do you think there are Muslims in the Philippines who are supporting the caliphate mentality of the ISIS right now in the Philippines?
Among intellectuals, wala akong alam.
Okay.
Unless they do not read. They stop reading after school.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That's a good one. More questions? Yes, please.
Yes, sir. I also want to touch on the issue of martial law since it's also one of the hotly debated topic. Attorney, do you think that martial law is helping the government contain the ISIS threat in the Philippines, or do you think it just further worsens the issue, sir?
Alam mo, hindi lang ang pananong iba militar na there will be military rule. Oo. And it will stop the ISIS. Granted, that's legitimate. Pero I see another reason why martial law should be imposed. At least in Lanao del Sur. Bakit? Kasi sa rehabilitation, maraming problema dyan eh. Daming problema dyan. For example, ikaw ang may-ari ng bahay mo. Pero sabi ng mga kapatid mo, ay kasama kami dyan eh. Ikaw lang ang kasi marunong ka, mayaman ka noon, nagtayo ka ng bahay dyan. Oo, pero inheritance natin yan eh. So, this has to be resolved.
So rehabilitation is not that easy.
It's not that easy. Magkakaroon ng problema, pero kailangan ng iron hand ng gobyerno natin. Oo. Marami pang mga problema dyan eh. Kaya, I see the logic of it.
Pero sir, why Lanao only, sir? Why not make it whole Mindanao, sir? Kasi yung pinupush, sir.
Hindi kasi alam mo, hindi ko na alam 'yan. Mas alam yan ni Rafi, ni Secretary Rafi kung bakit the whole of Mindanao kasi hindi ko pa nabasa yung report ng gobyerno natin sa Kongreso. At saka ang Kongreso sabi, hindi, pwede yan sa Inter-Mindanao. So ilan 'yon, Congressman? More than 200? So,
261.
Oo. Hindi ko pwedeng supersede yung mga pananaw nila. And they are representatives of the people. Siguro, mas magaling si Alunan kaysa sa akin.
Yes, please.
Hindi, kasi if I suggest you look for the map. I think it's available also on the internet. There's a map of Mindanao where the armed conflicts, or rather the armed clashes in Mindanao have been color-coded by pins, no? Green for Islamic extremists, red for the NPA. Oh, by the way, I just want to let you know that based on intelligence reports, they have a tactical alliance ng both groups. The NPA occupies the eastern side of Mindanao. The Islamist extremists occupy the western part. If you look at the map, more or less, ang western side is filled with green pins. The eastern side is filled with red pins. Where they converge is North Cotabato. Okay? There are red and green pins there. It's all over Mindanao. That map is filled with pins all over. And since they have a tactical alliance, and since we've observed that there are intensifying clashes in the western side and eastern side, I can understand exactly where President Duterte is coming from. Because martial law is not meant to extend his power the same way that martial law was imposed during the time of Marcos. This is to protect the people. This is for the safety and security of the people of Mindanao. Okay. That's the reason why the imposition of martial law is for the entire island of Mindanao.
Yes.
Linggoy of opinion. May I remain seated? Kasi mahaba yung tatanungin ko.
Teka muna, baka abutin tayo ng tanghalian
No
dyan.
problem.
Linggoy. Sige.
Okay. Si Chairman Marahomsalic, yung bang ISIS, ang pag-organisa ba nila ay line organization o coalition?
Hindi sila nag-coalesce eh. Original yan sa Lanao del Sur. O may mga radical na ulama, I was told 7 of them, wag mo nang, hindi ko alam yung pangalan doon, and I did not bother. Maging witness pa ako dyan. Oo. Sila mismo nag-organize, and many of their adherents come from the Madaris or the Arabic schools. Kaya ano yan, nagpapakamatay. Oo. At saka galit na galit sila sa mga, sabi nila, enemies ng Islam, quote-unquote. So, nag-coalesce lang sila ngayon. Ngayon lang, or along the way, may coalition.
Ito po ang preface sa susunod na mga tanong ko. Pag ihambing natin yung reaksyon ni Pangulong Marcos noong 1972 at yung reaksyon ni Noynoy noong 6 na taon niya at yung reaksyon ni Pangulong Duterte itong nakaraang taon, ganito po, yung pong Marawi, yung unang Marawi attack noong October 21, 1972, pagkatapos po ng 3 o 4 o 5 araw, na-recapture na yung buong Marawi. Yun naman pong atake sa Hulo noong February 4, na-recapture po yung Hulo ni Lieutenant Colonel Badong Mison, ang battalion commander, within 7 days, February 11. Yun naman pong Kauswagan, Lanao del Norte, noong March 15, year 2000, in less than 48 hours, na-recapture po ni General Simato. Yung pong Camp Abubakar, I think if I'm not mistaken, was captured on July 9. No? According to President Arap, which he told me personally, yung pong may nakita siyang batang na lechon sa Kauswagan when he went to Kauswagan on March 21, year 2000, yun po ang nagdetermina sa kanya to go to all-out war. No? Although that was not one continuous. No? From March 15 up to July 9 is, what do you call, April, May, June, July. 4 months, no? For an entire campaign. Yung pong Cotabato, noong February 1973, hindi po na-capture ang Cotabato City. By the way, I think no city that is majority Christian has been captured by the Moro rebels. However, they overran the old Cotabato, yung composed of Maguindanao, North Cotabato, and Sultan Kudarat. No? But to some extent, before February, there were 2 battalions in that big Cotabato, a PC battalion and a Army battalion, the 27th IB and the 55th PC battalion. Within a year, there were 30 battalions deployed under CEMCOM. Now, the Zamboanga siege took 2 to 3 weeks from September 8, 2013,
2013, yes.
up to Kwan. Now, last Saturday, 2 months na po ito. May I still continue my preface?
Okay na.
Hindi, meron pa. Kasi ano lang yun eh, dates lang yun eh, timeline lang
So,
yun eh. But ang isang malaking diferensya ay ganito. Noong pong 1972, ang ating armed forces, including the Philippine Constabulary, ay 50 to 60,000 lang. Ang pulis ay hindi national. They go with their mayors. No? Yung pong AFP, 2 months ago was about 120,000. The PNP was 150,000. And yung ating Air Force that was just air about 10 years ago had been built up to the credit of President Noynoy Aquino. As we can see, the planes are flying over Marawi. No? Now, from 1972 to 73, 74, the United States refused to sell arms and ammunition to Marcos. That is why we have the Italian Sia Marchetti. That's why we have the Italian Otto Melara Howitzer. That's why we have Portuguese cloned Cadillac Gauge Commandos. At that time, because of the Manila Massacre of 1971, the Gaddafi of Libya and the OIC had more or less recognized and were supporting the MNLF. And the support of the MNLF came from the neighbor, Malaysia, through Sabah. At that time, Indonesia was not yet that sensitive to internal problems. Ngayon po, today, there is no state except ISIS, if you consider it a state, that is sympathetic to what's happening in Marawi. Yung pong tulong dito, although they have a lot of money, comes from far away. Indonesia and Malaysia are very sensitive to any trouble that can spill over to them. So therefore, today, these ISIS are isolated compared to the situation of the MNLF. Now, what has happened? Are the old rebel Moros super Moros now? Or is the small AFP of 1972 fat and flabby today? That's my question.
Okay. Yung pala. Okay, haba ng premise. Secretary Alunan, coming from the reserve force.
Hindi ko maintindihan yung connection. But all I know is that our population at that time was about 30 million. We're now 100 million. If our armed forces was 60,000, and today it's 150,000, it just grew according to the growth of our population. And in the case of our police, all I know is that when I was the head of the National Police Commission, I was always told that the benchmark for proper public safety a control and management by the PNP is a ratio of 1 policeman for every 500 citizens. I don't think we've come close to 1:500 today, even if there's a growth in the number of policemen. And secondly, we no longer have the old PCINP, where we had a large combat force called the PC, that was a national maneuver force, although it had territorial assignments, and the INP, which were local police assigned to the local governments. Today, the Special Action Force is a shadow of the old PC in terms of size. In terms of capability, I think it can match the old PC pound for pound, no? But that's as far as I can comment in relation to the armed forces now as being fat and flabby. I don't think so. It's not so much being fat and flabby. I think the armed forces and the PNP have been neglected all these years. Our credible deterrence for both internal and external security is weak. And Marawi and what we have in the West Philippine Sea come at a time when we are weak, which is why we are now investing in credible deterrence. Now, how fast can the government beef up our capability internally and externally is another matter. But I think that's already recognized.
Thank you. Do we have more questions, Pat? I know you have a question or two. Yes. Sige na, Ligoy. Tuloy mo na.
May I answer my question?
That's a nice one, ha?
Yeah, gusto ko yun.
Okay. Yun ang maganda nun no?
I would like to give part of the credit to Chairman Marahomsalic because I always ask the resource persons my questions in private. Basically, the problem of duration in comparison to Marawi, October 21, 1972, and today, is that in 1972, the government did not have enough troops, so they could not surround the forces of Dimas Pundato in Marawi. And so, then, I don't know if he was already the Vice Chief of Staff, but PC Chief, not yet INP Director General Ramos, I think was the author of allowing the MNLF rebels, who by the way were not authorized by the Central Committee of the MNLF to do the raid on Marawi, to escape. However, today, the government had so many troops, the government had so much transport to surround Marawi, and that is why the, the hardcore ISIS were not abandoned by their softcore allies.
Okay.
That is my answer.
That is your answer. Okay. Thank you for the answer. The question and the answer. No, that's unique. Yes, Pat.
Ang baba. Sir, hindi, wala. We're talking of terrorism at saka terrorist. Yung ISIS pumasok na. Internationally, recognized na sila sa reckoning force. Malakas na sila talaga eh. Are we seeing dito mag-spillover yan na may mga member na ng ISIS or Maute na human bomb, yung gano'n?
Ayun.
Magkakaroon human
may
bomb na
human
yun.
bomb
Suicide bomber na. Gano'n na sila ka.
The only thing we have
Wala pang gano'n eh, di ba?
as of last year was a sex bomb. Right? Okay. Secretary Rafi, was it in 1996 when 15 Muslims went to Pakistan and had their training on ordnance and bomb making? And then yung suicide bomber ng practicum, walang gustong bumunot ng matchstick, kaya pinauwi na sila.
All I know, that suicide bombing, ito lang as an aside, no? All I know is that pag tinuro mo sa Maranao ang suicide bombing, matalino ang Maranao. Mautak masyado, hindi maute, mautak. Sasabihin yan sa kanilang guro sa suicide bombing. Ganun pala yun. Sige sir, pakidemonstrate nga. Kaya't wala pang namamatay na na Pilipinong Muslim eh. Oh. Pero kidding aside, you have to assume that if the country is infiltrated by ISIS, kasama na dyan ang mga suicide bombers nila. And now it's a question lang of where are they? How many are they? Kasi hindi naman lahat suicide bomber eh. These guys are also processed, no? And then pinipili yung hinug na talagang magpapakamatay. There are very few people who will do that. Now, the question is, how many have they been able to convert into suicide bombers and inserted into the Philippines? And where are they? See? And how will they perform their suicide bombing? Through a suicide vest? Through a car? Through a truck?
That's what they did in
or for that
France,
matter,
no?
or no, yung France sa Gaza. Pero I'm talking about a truck bomb na yung driver ay magpapakamatay. So, and the explosive of the truck bomb is different from the explosives or the explosive force of a car, no? Or I think in the past we've already seen motorcycles being used as bombs, no? Where they plant IEDs, no? Pagdating sa IED, maraming IED. It's a question of whether the fellow who brought the IED will also be the bomber himself or suicide bomber, no? Most likely, they will detonate it from a distance. Like in Marawi, marami sa ating mga tropa namamatay because of IEDs, booby trap. Last Saturday, 4 soldiers died trying to clear a building. An IED exploded, 4 sila namatay. No? So, in preparing for potential terrorist attack in urban areas by ISIS and their cohorts, you have to study how they do it in various parts of the world. And you must assume that they will likely do it here. So it can be in the form of an individual suicide bomber or a suicide bomber riding a car with explosives or a truck or an airplane. Kamikaze, that's really basically the kamikaze technique of the Japanese, no? So, sa akin, kung ako ay mag-prepare to protect the safety and to ensure security of the area that I'm assigned to, I will look at all of those scenarios and prepare accordingly.
Very well. Let's look forward, in as much as it is already 11 o'clock. We'd like to find your projections. Do they have sleepers in Metro Manila? Will they operate like what the movie Telephone had years ago? Na merong mantra tapos biglang gagalaw na lang yung tao magpapasabog ng bomba or something. Ano po nakikita niyo? Will there ever be an end to terrorism? Commissioner Nasser.
Walang end. Until federalism is installed, walang end yan. Kasi there will always be extraordinary, quote-unquote, people who will do it in the belief that they are being deprived of practicing their own religion in full tilt. Kasi ang sa Islam kasi, hindi lang religion yan eh. It's a way of life. Na walang connection sa religion, it's a way of life. May political aspect at saka yung religious aspeto niya, yun ang iba yon. Pero magkadugtong yon. Pero may social teachings. Yun ang hindi maintindihan ng West. Na ang Muslim, kailangan niya hindi lang material food, pati spiritual food.
Okay.
Ganun yon. So, unless bigyan mo sila ng kapangyarihan to direct their own destiny, ay hindi, ayaw ko, hindi the insurgency will not end.
Okay. Thank you. Secretary Rafi, please. Kung talagang merong puppeteer, when will the puppeteer stop?
We're only speculating, no? Because we really don't have enough facts. But the question is valid. Where are these guys getting their funds from? Malaking pera eh, ang ginagastos ng ISIS. Waging war is expensive. Preparing for war is equally expensive. No? Because you have to recruit. You have to pay the recruits. You have to train them. May bayad yan. May cost. You have to feed them. You have to arm them. And then when you send them to battle, nag-escalate yung costs yan. So, sino? Where are they getting that money from? Now, you asked, will this spread? You have to assume it will spread. I mean, they're rampaging in Africa. They're rampaging in the Middle East. They're rampaging in Europe. They're rampaging here. So you must anticipate that they have sleeper cells in various parts of the country, and it's up now to the intelligence services to be able to ferret them out. So the question that should be asked is the government firming up or beefing up its intelligence networks? Are they being funded? Are they adequately manned? Do they have enough technical resources like signals intelligence, electronic intelligence, apart from human intelligence assets, to address all of the threats to national security? And then, hindi lang intelligence funding, it's counterintelligence funding that's equally important to find out, infiltrated ba tayo? May mga espiya ba tayo? Are they house cleaning? Have they begun to clean house and identify all of these guys that could bring them down. Don't forget, Mama Sapano. Mama Sapano did not take place just like that. There were 10 attempts to get Marwan. And they had to go through this coordination thing. And each time they coordinated, alam agad ng kabila. So, obviously, ang operational security was bad, right? Of course, the consequence of not coordinating is also bad because ganun na nga nangyari sa kanila. That would not have happened at all if we were not infiltrated and if we weren't stupid in adopting protocols that give away our security.
Very well. On that, we end our special... Wala na, uuwi na. We will end our Tapatan sa Aristocrat today. We hope we can have more interesting topics in the near future. Thank you very much to our friends from the media and from the Aristocrat and to our guests. Have a nice day. And let's listen to what the President's got to say. Thank you.